So what are absolute and relative paths? Well, we saw relative paths already, I just mentioned that. A relative path simply means starting from my current location, I navigate to another folder. I'll come back to this in a few seconds, but let me now first show you the alternative, navigation via absolute paths. The absolute path is something that we saw in our first steps in the terminal a few minutes ago. Because whenever we enter our pwd command, the print working directory command, you get an absolute path. Because this absolute path always starts at the beginning. And what does at the beginning mean? Well, at the beginning is simply this slash right here, and this is our root directory. So starting from this root directory, we navigate our entire way through our folder structure until we arrive in our ZZ space folder. And that's important to understand, because let's say I now navigate to my home directory once again, like this. Or maybe not the home directory, not the best example to be honest. Let's navigate to our users directory. That's the better one here. So we are on this level. So with relative paths, I would have to access my user path here, this Lawrence M path, and then go to ZZ space. But with the absolute path right here, I have an easier option to do that, because I can simply copy this, now add cd for change directory, and now paste this. And now be careful, this won't work because right here we have a space in between. So it's important to add that space, or to indicate that space, with Shift Alt and 7 with the backslash here, and now enter space. And if we do this now, we are immediately here in our ZZ space folder. This is absolute path navigation. So the absolute path here in our Z shell always starts with the slash for the root folder and then contains the entire path down to the point where you are in the folder you want to navigate to. So this is the advantage of the absolute path navigation. No matter where you are at the moment, you can always jump to a specific folder if you want to. In your daily work, you typically work with relative paths though, because a relative path inside your project normally always works. So let's say you are inside this ZZ space folder, you have a project in here, and inside this project you always use relative paths. If you would then copy that folder somewhere else or move the entire project, it will still work because the relative paths always work within that folder structure. If you would, for example, work with absolute paths and then put this folder into another folder, for example, then this absolute path right here would not be correct anymore, and with that your project would break. Therefore, I would recommend to work with relative paths whenever possible. So with that, we saw how we can work with the terminal, how we can start it, we can see how we can see our absolute path here, what an absolute path is, what relative paths are, and we saw the cd command to navigate around in our folders. So far we talked about folders a lot. We didn't talk about ways to create or delete folders and to create or delete files. That's the next step. How can we now create folders and files? Well, let's first enter clear again to start at the top. And let's now stay in this ZZ space folder and let's create a new folder in here. To create new folders, we have another command, and this command is called mkdir. So basically make directory, so create a new folder. We are again in our ZZ space folder. This means we can now say we want to create a folder named project, maybe like this. You see the folder already here to the left in our Finder, but of course I could also list our items here. And with that, I can see this folder here inside my ZZ space folder. Let's now navigate into this folder with cd project. We are now in this folder, and if we list our items, we have nothing in it. And now we can also create a new file in here. To create files in the terminal, we have a very simple command, which is simply called touch. Now the question is, why is this command called touch if it creates files? Well, touch typically allows you to, touch existing files and simply change the date when these files were changed the last time. I'll show you this in a few minutes. But if touch can't find a specific file, it will simply create a new one. So basically, we kind of misuse this feature, but touch is the way to create files in our terminal, in our Z shell here. And we could create an indexed HTML file by simply entering the file name and the file type, of course. If we confirm this and now check what we have in our folder, we have this indexed HTML file. You can also create multiple files, by the way. You simply enter touch then let's say the styles.css file, then a space, and then the script.js file for a JavaScript file. Let's do this. And if we now list again our items, we see we have created these 3 files in our terminal with this simple command. Besides creating files, we can of course also delete files here in our terminal. The deleting command for files is simply called, well, rm. rm deletes a file permanently, and that's very important to keep in mind. You won't get any warning here, and you also won't find your files in the trash. If you delete the file right here in the terminal, the file is gone. So very important, if you use the remove command here, then you should really know what you're deleting. Otherwise, well, you might have some trouble afterwards. And because of that, be aware that you are currently in that folder, in that project folder, this one right here. So you can now remove these 3 files if you want to. If you want to delete a single file, you simply type rm and then, for example, styles.css. So now it's deleted. If we now list our items, you see it's gone. But you can also remove multiple files by typing rm and now the index.html file, space, and now the script.js file. If you do that, you see, if you list it, the folder is empty again. Now with the folder being empty, well, we actually don't need this folder anymore. Therefore, we can navigate one level up with cd ... Now we are again in our zz space folder. So we are right here now in this folder, and let's maybe clear this once again. And now we can also remove this project folder. To do this, we don't use the rm command, which is for single files, but the rmdir command, so remove directory. And we can now refer to this directory that we have in our current folder where we currently are. And this means we want to remove our project folder. If we do that and list it, you see the folder is gone, as can also be seen right here in our Finder. With that, we can navigate another level up maybe, like this. Now we are again back in our home directory. And here, I now want to remove another directory, and this is our zz space directory. So we enter that right here, add the backslash, and remove this one. And confirm this. You see to the left, the directory was deleted. And if we now again enter ls, we see this directory is not existing anymore. There is one important thing to keep in mind when it comes to deleting directories though. And for this, I would go into our zz directory once again. And here we'll create a new folder with our mkdir command. And let's simply call this test because it doesn't matter at this stage. We now have this folder, as can be seen here. And in this test folder, which I now would like to access with cd, I will create a new file. This works with our touch command. So let's say we want to create an index.html file and maybe also a styles.css file once again. So now this folder contains these 2 files. And if I now navigate up one level, so I'm again now in that ZC folder. Let me show this right here. So we are now on this level. We have this test folder and now I would like to delete it. So you could say, no problem, I'll take the remove directory command right here and now enter the folder name test. If we try this and confirm it, we get a warning that our directory is not empty. And in the end, if we list the items, not list the items, sorry, my bad. If we navigate into our test folder and now list the items, that's what I want to do. You see those 2 files are still existing. So with the default remove directory command, it's not possible to remove folders which contain files. And this also makes kind of sense because this can of course cause big trouble. If you just delete a folder which might contain data you later need, which you weren't aware of, then, well, as I said, the data is gone. So this is maybe nothing you want to have at this stage. The way to remove this folder would then be to remove these single files. So you can remove the index.html file and also the styles.css file, like this. If you confirm this, you list the items, see those are gone, and then you can navigate up one level and then say remove directory, the test directory, confirm this, and as can be seen to the right and to the left and right here, we only have this practice directory left. This is one way to do this. There is a way though which allows you to delete folders which contain files. And there is a big warning at this stage. I do not recommend to do this, especially as a beginner, but in the next lecture, I'll show you how this works. And to understand this, we also have to understand a concept named flags. Let's do this next. And before we do that, let's clear our terminal here. So what are flags? Flags allow you to add additional options to your commands. Now this sounds a bit cryptic, therefore let's try it. And for that, I'll navigate into our practice folder and we use our ls command to see that this folder is empty. Therefore, let's quickly create two files. So we use our touch command and again create an index.html file and our styles.css file. Nothing new. If we list these items, we have those. With flags, we can now tailor how this content of this folder should be displayed. For example, you could say you want to have the file size of these two files that we have in this folder. For this, you enter ls, now a space, and now you simply add -s. That's a flag. If we do this, you see we have a file size of 0. Well, if we look at the files in our Finder, you see that this is true. We have 0 bytes for our files because these files are empty. So that's not the most exciting thing to display here, but you could also say you want to display this information in the so-called long format. The long format would be something like this. So you enter -l or -l. If you do that, you get additional information about your data, including the creator here, so myself, and the date when these files were created. You can also combine such flags. For example, you could say you take your ls command and now you say you want to have this long format, including the file size we had before. If you do that, you see that the file size was added at the beginning here of our command. Not very helpful for our purposes though. But this is basically how flags work. You can use these flags to add additional information to your command. And if you want to find out more about the available flags for a specific command, you can just type man for manual and then the corresponding command, in our case ls. With this, you get access to the manual and you can now scroll through that, and there you can find all the flags available with capital letters, with lowercase letters. You can find our L command that we just had down here, or also the S command for our file size right here. So with that, you can play around a bit and tailor your commands. Now let's escape this manual with Q, by the way, and let's clear this, because the actual purpose of this flags thing here was the option to remove folders which include files. If we move one level up right here with cd ... so we are now in our ZC folder, and it's important to be in this folder here, and we want to remove this practice folder. We learned that with remove directory, practice here, this won't work because the directory is not empty, but we can use the rm command. So this command here we use for single files to, well, remove this folder which contains data. For this, I first want to access the manual of that rm command like this. So we are now in this manual in here. If you now scroll down a bit, you can find this -r option, which is equivalent to this capital letter R, but I'm always using this -r if I am using it. This allows you to remove the file hierarchy rooted in each file argument. Now, in simpler words, this simply means if you delete a folder, it will also delete all the data this folder contains. Now, the problem here is if you use that command, and as I said, especially for beginners, I do not recommend to do this, but if you have to remove folders containing many files, and if you then use this command, be very careful about what you're doing. Because if you press Q right here to escape the manual, then we are now in our ZC folder, and now we can say remove, right? But not the file. We add the space and now -r, and now we specify what should be removed. And this is our folder here, the practice folder. So what we're doing here is we are removing the practice folder, including all the hierarchy it contains, including all the data, subfolders, files, and so on. And we can also omit the slash right here. So we will do this now. And if you now wait a moment, well, you see the folder is gone, although it contained files. And I want to emphasize this once again. Be very careful when using this command, because with this command, you can seriously harm your system. You can remove important files and you can't bring these files back. Our practice folder and the containing files are gone now. However, this is how flags work and how you can remove folders which also contain files. This can be necessary in some web development projects, in bigger projects. Therefore, I wanted to show you this. With that, we are coming closer towards the end of this Mac terminal introduction part. There is only one last thing that I would like to show you, and this is how we can copy or move single files, multiple files, or even entire folders. This is what we will tackle as a next step.